Good evening, everyone. Let's start with a moment of silence and appreciation and consideration for others. Thank you very much, and officially call this meeting to order. We have a quorum, and say welcome to all of you. We have a light crowd here tonight. I don't know if that is good or bad, but all of you are here, and we appreciate those of you that have shown up, and hope that we're not wasting your time tonight, and look forward to a good meeting. We've got some important things to talk about. And the first thing we're going to do is pledge allegiance to the flag, which is to my right. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I don't see anybody that's never been here before. Okay. Agenda approval or consideration of approval of the agenda number 4. Any motion?
Move approval.
Second discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. It's unanimous, Madam Clerk. Number 5, consideration of approving the minutes for October 18. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes.
A second.
Motion to approve as presented and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Again, it's unanimous. Number 6, public comments on agenda items. It's my understanding that no one has signed up for speaking tonight. Is that correct? Mr. Fletcher?
That's
That's
correct. Correct.
Number 7 on the agenda, the police report in the absence of Chief Wally Lane, Jeremy Dixon. Wow, you looking mighty dapper there tonight.
Thank you for having me. This will be short and sweet. I think I know most of you. For those of you that I don't, I'm Jeremy Dixon. Chief couldn't make it here tonight, so he asked me to step in for him. In your books there, you can see the numbers. We had a total of 169 calls.
You
Jeremy,
need to speak in the microphone.
just so it gets recorded,
We'll arrest you if you don't do that.
There you go. Can you hear me now? I like to wonder when I speak.
Yeah.
As I was saying, we had 169 calls during the month of October. If you have any questions on them, they're pretty standard. Nothing really jumps out at me. One thing I will mention, and it's not on this one, I'm kind of jumping ahead because this ends October 31st. But on November the 3rd, we did have our first house that we know of that was reported broken into, and we have 3 TVs reported missing. So it's that time of year, unfortunately, it starts. We hope we can get ahead of it and stop it before it gets out of control. We're doing everything we can, to be there, but we did have that reported on November 3rd, and so far, that's the only one that we know of. Like I said, I know that's not on this one, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I wanted to mention that. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them for you if I can.
Mr. Dixon,
Yes, sir.
understand you're filling in, so I don't want to catch you off guard, but
I'll do my best.
lost property, 20 calls. Can you elaborate on that? What's lost property? Is
It could be
that stolen?
anything, it could be anything from lost cell phones. I know, there was 3 or 4 license plates that got turned into, the police department where,
Oh,
I don't know how, nothing against, I don't know how you lose a license plate, but they bring them to the police department, we turn them in as lost
Gotcha.
property. And also during the, because this would have actually included the Festival by the Sea. We got a lot of lost property that gets turned in, whether it's keys, cell phones, things like that, during the Festival by the Sea. So that's probably where most of those numbers came from.
thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Thank you for all you do and all your department does.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Number 8, Town Manager Hewitt, after action report for Hurricane Matthew.
Let me start by saying that it is possible to turn a 6-page report into a 26 slide presentation. You do that when you use big text. What I have here is a summary, slides that are in summary.
And I'm not going to regurgitate the report itself, but the slides do serve to summarize the event, the experiences, the issues, and the takeaways that we experienced during the storm. And this report has been prepared at the request of the commissioners, although we do something very similar to it after each storm and try to take the lessons learned back into our daily operations.
David, I might want to mention that this report is also available on the website, right?
Absolutely.
In full.
So Hurricane Matthew, it began the last week in September, but it really blew up into a Category 5 storm down in the Caribbean, north of Venezuela, last day of September. And then finally, as it wiggled its way through the Bahamas and it finally exited off the Outer Banks on the 9th, our actual state of emergency was in place the 6th through the 11th of October. We started looking at Matthew, about 2 weeks out. We got some rumblings that there was some weather, weren't really worried about it. And as it progressed through the Bahamas, it actually looked like it was going to do a curlicue and not even make it all the way up to North Carolina. But once it started crawling up the Florida Panhandle, we started seeing rain showers inland, and even though by Thursday it was raining pretty good up here, the forecast was still for it to be curlicuing back around, and the real question at that point in time was, maybe it's going to go around for seconds. We didn't know. But then it seemed like it really got traction there about Jacksonville, and then ultimately Thursday, Friday, and Saturday over the weekend, the eye was 5 miles right off the water tower here. So even though we think that we know what these storms are going to do, we don't. It makes taking protective actions not difficult, but just making sure what type of protection actions you may choose to do may be more challenging. The first bullet on this slide is not in the report. This is a David opinion, but I do want to, this is a foot stomper. This storm shows the disconnect between our coastal insurance rates and inland. I mean, up in Bladen County, Robeson County, those folks, I don't think that there's going to be any argument that those folks have experienced catastrophic losses to a greater extent than we have here. We had shingles and siding plus erosion on the beach, which is kind of another different matter. The high degree of variability between storms magnifies the gap between our everyday operations, expectations, and what we're actually capable of doing. What I mean there, we cope on a daily basis within our existing resources, but in a storm event like Matthew, which wasn't a really bad storm if you were here, not in Lumberton, even that has us on the threshold of failure on a number of different fronts. Specifically, and I've got some categorical by department type reports that I'll go through here on the issues. Personnel-wise, I think it's important for folks to realize that we have 3 phases of the storm. Our guys and girls are getting ready prior to the storm. You're bunkered down for a time indeterminate during the storm. And then the reconstitution phase. That's not three different piles of people doing the jobs. That's the same people that are stretched out for, well, we're still doing cleanup with the sewer system. So those things stretch out. It's a small staff whose lives may be impacted themselves when Tim's roof blows off his house at Ash. You know, we could be in a world of hurt when the staff has issues to deal with. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of that. And this is my opinion also from what I witnessed, especially with the Public Works and the Police Department, is that 4 to 5 days is about the max that is humanly possible with the operational pace that they were taking place. You know, some of those folks on day 5 looked like the zombies that you see on television. So just wanted to make sure that I had the personnel issues pointed out there. And I also want to say that these slides are generalizations of what's contained in the report. It's not down into the ad infinitum, so if we can comment on that afterwards if you like, or during. The emergency operation.
Just so I fully understand this statement, 4 to 5 days limit on full duty, are you talking about 12-hour shifts, 14 hours? What are we looking at?
We're lucky if we get to lay down sometimes. I can say that for the cops, you know, they're scheduled on a 12-hour shift. Jeremy Dixon, who just left with me, or just left, was with me for an indeterminate amount of time. I don't know if he went to sleep for 4 days, to tell you the truth.
I don't want to jump ahead, but are you going to talk about this further in terms of takeaways, or? Because obviously that's a significant safety concern to our employees as well as potentially interacting with others.
Taking it away only from the aspect of the variability on these storms is so great that some of these circumstances you have to react to. And, you know, when a storm, like back in the mid-'80s when we had Bertha, or '90s when we had Bertha, to lay out here for almost a week and go back and forth and back and forth, I don't know if there's a solution to that kind of thing in terms of trying to set up your manpower pool. Where we ultimately go to is to request additional resources through other law enforcement and to execute through our host tenant support agreement once we get to that point. You really can't program a preloaded request for additional resources in until you see how bad it's going to be. And even at that point in time, we were able to get 2 cops from Gaston County Sheriff's Department because everybody was inland. Everybody had gone inland. The Emergency Operations Center, it works fine. Emergency Operations Center doesn't have a sewer system. That it works independently. I say it's got a sewer system. It's got a big septic tank over there, so it's not restrained by the same issues that the island dwellers are. Kitchen facilities over there served well for those folks that were running shifts. They could be fed. Bedding is another issue. Unless you like camping and sleeping out on the floor, that's kind of your options over there. Our cloud systems work. We have the capability, regardless of where we are, if we're in that building or Shalot or wherever, we have the capability to function within our software that we have, financial, permitting, whatever that may be. There was an issue with the generator sets, automatic transfer switch, generator crank, but we just had to manually do a manual override. So we've got some training to do there. Sewer system and public works, as it turned out, we took 5 to 7 feet of a storm surge and had to shut the sewer down. In addition to having power interruptions, not only at all 4 lift stations, the island had power interruptions in half of Brunswick County, and a lot of southeast North Carolina was without power. We were fortunate, even though we didn't have our 2 generators that we had bought in and operational, we had preloaded a request and had 2 generators that were on standby, so we had a capability to provide power to all 4 lift stations once the storm cleared on out of here. And after we got the power set back up and going, it still took a half a day to regenerate the sewer system. In addition to the fact that once we get the sewer system up and running, in order to get vacuum restored, you got to do a manual check on all 1,500 of the valve pits. So when we say that the sewer system is on, yes, it's on and operational, but it's going slow. And that was probably facilitated by the fact that we didn't have any houses sitting in the middle of the road or didn't have a lot of sand on the road. So there was a couple spots where we had to run the backhoe through, but that didn't take very long.
I don't want to extend your discussion too long, but I also want to give credit. I understand that the staff took proactive measures to throttle down, I'll say, the pump station number 4 to give us more margin for against failure. Is that?
I
I
thought
was-
we just shut it off.
Okay. The reason I bring this up, I'm not sure if the public knows that, and I didn't read about it in the after-action report, but I saw that as being a positive in thinking ahead and taking actions to mitigate projected failure.
Well, and that's why we did it right there. There's, it was knee deep in lift station 4. Here's a picture of what that looks like.
David, knowing what happens with 5 days' work for these guys when they're just going around the clock and hardly going to sleep sometimes, is it not possible to organize having external help, say from plumbers that are nearby? We got outstanding crews of all kinds of professionals that we could organize having them being available to us
We actually,
through it and at the end of a storm, even for inspections?
the critical skill set on this type of event is a commercial electrician. Have them available. That's invaluable. That can deal and help make the decision when you got that much water in a lift station on just what to expect and what not to do. There's a reason why they're wearing hip boots around here, and of course one of them isn't to keep from getting shocked. The fact of the matter is the candy canes that we have out there, when we put 4 or 5 feet of water over the top of them, we've got the sewer system shut off. Those candy canes are basically, it's a fancy carburetor. It lets air into the system whenever the vacuum trigger fires on the valve pits. Once the sewer system is shut off, those valve pits, they're about 50 gallons or some of them have 2 houses hooked onto them. When you're pinned down in your house for, 18, 24 hours, 30 hours without the sewer system on, add the Holden capacity in your 6-inch discharge pipe, you might have 75 gallons of capacity. Those candy canes double as discharge for raw sewage. So when that sewer system's off, you take a couple baths, fix a meal, do some laundry because you're hemmed up in the house, the storm's running. You're discharging raw sewage on the ground. Now, do I know that there's raw sewage going on the ground? No, I don't have any data to collect that. I know how much water they use at my house. I've got a 14-year-old, and when we start puttering around to get hemmed up, we use more than 100 waters in a 24-hour time cycle. So those candy canes are an issue that is a takeaway. Later on, you'll see it, that we're going to have to deal with.
David, excuse me. So I know especially in the sewer system, you have several, need to address that, there's things you need to look further. Is there going to be a supplement to this report to address the,
I would hope that these issues could be rolled over in the sewer system vulnerability.
Yeah,
That would be the logical way to do that. I can't see how there would be a divestiture of that effort. I would hope we would be able to roll those issues into. This is one that we had, we thought we knew about, those candy canes, but we hadn't ever experienced it. We haven't ever had 6 feet of water come over the bulkheads in the canals. We've always expected it on the front. So this was an anomaly of some sorts. But it did serve to illuminate an issue that is related to an ongoing effort that we're going to have to deal with. But suffice it to say, we did have a bypass pump that was available, and instead of turning the lift station 4 back on, we were able to just run a raw sewage pump and go from the collection tank into the force main on a short-term basis so we can get the system back up and running. The police, this is a summary slide, and what I will address here is that our police officers are victims of their own good grace and manners and skill at social action and integrating with the community to the point that they put themselves unnecessarily in harm's way. And what am I talking about? When we have a conversation with someone that cannot get on the island in the middle of the road up there, that is dangerous. We do not want that to happen. When those guys are doing that access control, it's either go or no go, and not why can't. That's not the time and place to have that discussion, and we'll handle that with some other techniques that we've discussed with the police department. Access control, we can control the bridge realistically. Keeping people from getting in boats and coming up to the canals it's not realistic for that to be expected of the police department. There are other ways through the sheriff's department, other assets that can be requested, but to think that we can secure the entire beach strand with our police department in a hazard situation, that's just not a realistic expectation. And coupled with the fact that after the storm passed, we had the fair weather syndrome. So why can't I get back on the beach? The sun's shining and the birds are chirping, and why can't I get back on the beach? And that was an issue that we had to deal with.
Back to the entry points that can't be controlled, by the police department, I understand that. Once we made notification to the Brunswick County Sheriff's Department, they made their presence known, which was a good thing. And I did witness a Coast Guard craft out, and I understood later that they were clearing the intercoastal waterway to all boat traffic, but they had to conduct that surveillance first. So based on that, do we have those notifications now? Are they part of a checklist or something that we would, if we do restrict access to the island, would we make those requests?
May I interject something on that? I was the one that called the sheriff, which is standard protocol as the needs arise. I called him and expressed concern about the boats coming up the canals. In about a 10-minute conversation, we agreed that he would put his boats in the water. He would contact the Coast Guard and that they would bring their small craft over and patrol the waterway. And the third thing was that he would put his helicopter in the air over Holden Beach. And to quote myself, I said, how about buzzing the canals so those people down there in the boats can see that you're patrolling? He did that, and I assume that some of you in the room may have seen the sheriff's helicopter flying over the island. And, you know, so it's pretty standard protocol to work with the sheriff and his department, and as it needs arise, he has and always will, in my mind, provide us with whatever services he can. And that's just one of the, I don't know that it's written up in the books or anything, but those of us that have been doing it for a long time know that's the way it works. So if you don't want to put it in writing or something, that's fine, but we'll call whoever, we being whoever you put in charge, should have straight line connections with the governor's office down. And so that's the way it all came about.
And we have our interlocal agreement in place that authorizes that. My point is that for the duration of the event, I don't want anybody to think that the sheriff is going to provide that service to us for 3 days in a row, or we can count on the Coast Guard is going to secure the perimeter of the island. That is, I mean, it's just not, I don't think that is going to happen. They can do it on an as-requested basis, but I mean, once things started happening in Lumberton, we lost a lot of local resources from around here. Public facilities, and what I'm talking about here is mainly beach access, Jordan Boulevard Pavilion, those types of facilities. We have to inspect those. Now I'm over into almost the inspector's realm here. We have to inspect those to make sure that they're okay for folks to get on, just so that, and that takes time. It takes a qualified individual to make the call on that, and that's the inspector as far as the town's public facilities go, so we can have some assurance that they're safe for people to go on. Regarding the beach itself, there's always something, wreckage, that type of thing that normally comes up. This time, we didn't see any wreckage unless you want to count the artificial reef that keeps floating up. Every time there's a real strong southeast wind. In the past, we've seen docks and that kind of thing on the front. We didn't see so much of that now as we did, this time as we did with the walkways that were broken off, but not a lot of flotsam and jetsam that was hazardous to the public per se. But that still takes an initial windshield tour, external folks coming in to help us with our beach evaluation, and that's where we are now with the formal assessment on our strand losses with the FEMA reps, the technical advisory crews that are in the area. Decals, my favorite four-letter word. Decals are a pressure point. Ask anybody in the front office or ask anybody on the bridge. We do think that it works well for bridge access. What we're going to do is we're going to review our decal distribution process, specifically to how easy that the process has been made, so that folks don't really pay attention when they get their decals in the mail. We are considering going back to a more manual process, so folks are cognizant of acquiring them and what it means in terms of that is your pass. When you go get on an airplane, you don't say, I left it at the house. That's your pass to get on the beach. We're going to look at our process there. In the past, we have had it done manually, a more manual, and we think we may have gone overboard with providing the decals to folks. But one thing that we did learn through this process is that consistency is key. I believe that we probably, I would say, other than one person from Lowe's that we thought had a governor's get out of jail free card, everybody who came on the island during the restricted period had an authorized decal to get on. So that was consistent. A lot of people got their feelings hurt. A lot of people got turned away, but the rule was to get on the island, you had to have a decal. If you didn't have a decal, you didn't get on the island, to my best knowledge. One thing that we saw that we did not anticipate is that we actually had people evacuating from Lumberton down here. Had not anticipated that at all. We actually, and you know, that circumstance manifested itself with me talking to, I know she had to be 80, and she had a pickup truck with all of her frozen deer meat from Columbus County, and she didn't have a sticker on her truck, but she wanted to get to her property on the beach, and she was denied access because she did not have a decal on the thing. So we saw it all, folks, and we heard it all. Yes, sir.
Well, we never got decals, and I guess a lot of people that should get decals. And I went to get a decal, and it's like, well, you can only have one. I said, well, I have two vehicles. I'm like, you don't care. You want the one or not? We're running short. I thought that was unacceptable.
Well,
There was a lot of people that are saying, we never got it either. And they don't know how that happened, but
like I said, we're looking at that process so that you'll know when you get a sticker the next time. Because you remembered right then that you weren't able to get a sticker, and I guarantee you, the next time you get a sticker, if I have anything to do with it, you'll know when you get it. It's not going to come to you. Well, I'm not going to go any further with that.
David, you mentioned, maybe fortunately at the airport, if you don't have your ticket. But I don't have a ticket anymore when I go to the airport. I have it
Yes.
on my iPhone.
You got a ticket. It's on your
I've got it
iPhone.
on my iPhone. So I don't have to have it in the car. If I get it on my phone and I've got it, then I'm okay.
You have a digital ticket.
Exactly.
You have a pass. Planning and inspections, one thing that we were exposed to, and Tim and I have seen this before, that there were some contractor yards that weren't secured. We did not, we missed that. Contractors, have stuff flying around. A lot of folks were working up to the last minute, and, they just left their lumber on, and that could be hazardous if you don't secure that. We have become assured that our walkway ordinance, it exists for a reason, and in its current configuration, it works. Tim, you want to talk to that, please?
Well, what we had roughly 41 walkways that were damaged and had to be brought back. Out of all those walkways out there, every single one of them were walkways that had got to be extended because the frontal dune had moved in those areas. And what we noticed was all the walkways left and right of them, they could have moved, but they stayed where they were at, and most of them were put in between 2006 and 2009. And so all those walkways that were established where the original frontal dune was, that didn't get extended, were actually still there. The high water mark almost measured them perfectly to the base of what was considered the original frontal dune. So what was glaringly obvious was that the frontal dune ordinance works, and that trying to extend them for any other reason other than the frontal dune moving out, or trying to create a situation where those walkways could extend beyond those frontal dunes, any walkway that would have been like that during this storm would have been exposed, and then it would have been subject to the rules and regulations of public trust land and to the rules and regulations effectively giving the, you're not saying that you have to move out when you write a new ordinance, but you're effectively giving them permission to go out there. And if they had, our damage assessment would have been much greater, and our loss factor would have been much higher. So effectively, the ordinance that we have in place has shown that it worked, and it was put in place based off of Florida. So the current ordinance kept us to a minimum, and the only reason we had more was because that frontal dune had moved somewhat from where its original spot was. And a lot of them, the ones that had to be brought back, you could actually tell where they were cut off and extended from the original frontal dune. So it was obvious. If you walk out there today, you can still see it. If you walk out there now, look at the ones that had to be brought back and look at the ones that are already there, you'll see rows of walkways that are perfectly in line right down that frontal dune that weren't touched during this storm.
I have a question. Were we complying with the existing walkway ordinance?
Yes.
Well, so how did we end up with walkways beyond?
The
I just heard the frontal dunes had migrated seaward, so in
Right.
accordance with the ordinance, you could build a walkway to it, right?
That's right, that's right. But what, we were talking about changing the ordinance. We
Oh,
were talking about changing the ordinance. And what we found was our current ordinance that is in place really works.
had we given any variances that resulted in walkways being too far out that you're aware of?
No, it's hard to show hardship for that. The only walkways that maybe go out on a variance would be ones like our wheelchair access, because you'd have to show a hardship
Okay.
on variance.
But Tim, we had a walkway that was out 30 feet out onto the beach for the last year. It got damaged in Anna, I think. It got undermined and was hanging, and it stayed there, but it's not there anymore. It's gone. But they actually added to it while it was 30 feet out onto the beach. They added more steps to get down to the beach.
We had several out there that was, the ordinance basically said if you had anything larger than 4 feet beyond the frontal dune, or a walkway that went out beyond the frontal dune, then it had to be brought back. That's the way the ordinance reads.
But they didn't bring it back.
We abandoned, well, the town abandoned that process unless you were doing repairs and that sort of thing. So if there was one out there that happened to, then either it got put out there because there was an escarpment rule in the ordinance that needs to come out that would allow you to go out further or to repair what was out there. There's actually a portion of that ordinance that talks about escarpments. In other words, if you're gonna fall off, go out there and you're gonna fall off, then you're given permission to go out further.
Another issue that came up is the need for some more outreach regarding the CRS program and the repetitive losses. There still remain some instances of construction in the floodplain. Anybody that drove by and saw a number of the mattresses and couches that were out beside the road, the water got up 6 feet. It didn't get up 16 feet. So there's a lot of man caves and stuff that we think that can benefit from some education regarding our CRS rating and that whole NFIP program. And we've got a real good opportunity coming up with the publishing of the new maps that is supposed to come out in January. Still is the most current information that we have. Open drains below the BFE. This goes to the candy cane issue. This is actually a violation of the plumbing code. We're going to work through DWQ and the Building Code Council to come up with a solution that's acceptable for both the operations of our, as it's reflected in our sewer permit and the plumbing code. So we're going to have to engage with external agencies on that, regardless of what we do there. But the short version is that open drains below the base flood elevation, that's an intake, which is the candy cane that's at the ground level. So that's the issue that we're dealing with. And once again, we proved that we can conduct inspections manually. We're not tied to a digital system. Those inspections, whenever we need to do repairs, can be done manually. Also in the building inspector's purview are the docks issue. We believe that the canal dredging program's initiative to help identify substandard docks for the last several years has paid benefits in the fact that many bulkheads have been repaired. And of course that helps keep silt out of the canals and keeps the cost of the canal dredging program down. However, many of those failures may not become apparent for several months. We just don't know. We're going to have to wait and see on that. One of the things that we had intended on getting to is addressing the floating docks and ramp deficiencies. We didn't get around to that, and Tim's got that on his short list of effort to put forward and address and identify those floating docks and ramps that need some tending to. And there's a special interest item on just what all is associated with the float-offs. Some of the docks we experienced, some of the docks actually slipped their moorings, slipped off the top of the pylons and ended down the street at Joe and Nancy's house. We also had occasions where pirating of those floating docks was occurring, and correct me if I'm wrong, that type of issue is really a civil matter between the purported owner and the purported salvager, because if it's floating, it's not a marked vessel, it's whoever has the salvage rights to it. Is that a fair assessment? Unless it crashes in and causes damages to someone else's property, and then it's still a civil matter.
I think it's just a civil matter, whether or not a floating dock is something that can be salvaged. I think it's something that two parties would argue over in a court of law at a great expense.
Now, where the town,
So, just so we understand this, so it's our assessment that if a floating dock leaves its point of origin, it is considered salvage material.
No.
Well, I thought that's what I just heard.
The town doesn't need to give an opinion on that because it's a civil situation. The person that's claiming it's going to say that it is something that can be salvaged. The person that lost the dock's going to say it's mine, it's not something under admiralty law that can be salvaged.
Well, I experienced that directly with someone doing it, so I think it would be incumbent on us to know what the answer is, to educate. See, a lot of these issues are communication, and
I think there's too much gray area there for the town to take a position, specifically whether or not it is impeding the ability to safely navigate the canals. We have some ownership issues, potentially of who is the owner of the canals. If it starts resting, if the dock is resting on private property, what rights does that person have? There are a lot of things that would need to be flushed out. I sadly did follow on Facebook the dispute about the floating dock down here, and that is absolutely something that is a civil matter. If that property owner, the dock property owner wanted to press charges, then they would need to take action from a criminal standpoint, and then that's going to be up to the magistrate.
where I think the town would get involved in is if that dock came to rest in a public right-of-way, or it came out in the street and was blocking traffic, we'd either push it to the side or carry it on if it was identified as a public safety issue.
maybe I misspoke. I wasn't looking for the town to come up with a position, but I think it's worthy to evaluate this, and at least so we can communicate to citizens when and if it happens again, which is not out of the realm of possibility, that they would know what their rights are. and I'm not asking our attorney to answer it right now, but I'm uncomfortable just walking away from it saying, well, it's a civil matter, because that's, I think a lot of people rightfully have questions, myself included.
Suppose a dock floats onto somebody's property. Who is responsible for removing?
I think that's the whole gray area, is that once you start handing out legal advice to citizens about these situations, then it spirals into, well, what about this situation, what about that situation? I recognize this, but those are very expensive items, and that's something that has occurred before and could potentially occur again. I think that those folks that are affected by that are probably better served by consulting their own attorney, because the case law, is arguable. And if I wanted my flooding dock back, I wouldn't come and ask the town, I would hire my own lawyer and say, give me my dock. But, I have had some discussions with the town manager about that, particularly in regards to clearing the canals or public property. We recognize that that's something that's come out of this storm that we need to be able to provide more information for.
And we've said too that on the ocean or anywhere on the island, if something floated from someone else's property onto yours, then you're responsible for that cleanup. I mean, my neighbor has a huge walkway, that he's gotta take off. So part of it is that as well.
Yeah, and I just, the float-offs, many of those, I suspect, were because the poles that were securing them weren't high enough. I was just fortunate that mine was higher than some of my neighbors, so. But anyway, I'm not looking, I'm an advocate for small government. I'm not asking for us to figure out all this, but I do think there are issues here that, as our town attorney has said, we should be communicating at least what we know or what we don't know, so we aren't caught by surprise next time. Sorry.
Communications. It goes without saying that everybody that's got a cell phone these days is a cub reporter, and either has good intentions or good intentions. The town uses multiple techniques. We've got an app, got a website, we've got Facebook, we got Twitter. Heather, what else we have? Notification to the local media outlets. I mean, we pretty much have it covered, I think, as far as getting the word out. Now, ability of the masses to receive that, we can only take it so far unless we're going to start sending up smoke signals or getting a ham radio. But speaking of radios, I happen to have, my dad gave me an expensive Grundig radio one time. The first time I've pulled it out in a long time, and it'll pick up people in Buenos Aires. You can get stuff like that. There's also all-weather radios that, matter of fact, the television station had a all-weather radio programming day, so those types of vehicles are available to folks should they want to avail themselves of it. During the storm inquiries, we had 164 emails that came through. These are just categories of questions, the majority of which had to deal with, is the bridge closed? When is it going to close? How long is it going to be closed? Those types of questions. And the rest of them, general inquiries like, is it raining? How long is the wind going to blow? Those types of things. I'm not being facetious either. They're all in the appendix there if one wants to go through and look at it. So from a staff level, all of these were answered individually. Now, whether or not they like the answer they got remains to be seen, but every one of them were answered. One thing that we realize is that our emergency information on the website doesn't go pow. It doesn't, it's buried down over in 6 layers deep, that type of thing. And that's a consequence of, we only have a storm every once in a while, and other things are more important. The website itself has limitations on how many pages you can put. We're going to fix that, and that's an easy fix, but to a larger degree, our website needs reworking totally. We realize that. This is just a get your attention kind of thing that we're going to have to do that. And then post-storm feedback based on, we sent out an email blast to everybody that said basically, how'd we do, and give us your inputs. And, you know, I think that's 88%. We had 55 responses. 88% says that we did okay, and the other 6 people says that we need improvements. Those responses are contained, I believe it's Appendix E, and we will take, and they range the gamut on as normal suggestions do, from, and this is an exaggeration of, you should wear a GoPro and you know, live in a virtual world during the storm and be like Jim Cantor. I'm being facetious there, but there were some very good suggestions in there, and we'll take all of them into consideration and work those into our program. Like I mentioned before, these were kind of the cats and dogs thing. That artificial reef experiment in the 1970s has. It might have worked until the 80s, but it's still yielding rubber, and depending on how severe the storm is, nonetheless, without fail, we get probably a couple or 2 flatbed trailer trucks full of tires after each event. We have to dispose of them. Propane tanks. We knew that propane tanks moved during storms. We did not realize the magnitude of which and numbers that we saw, especially in the canal subdivisions, of propane corks. Those propane tanks floated. Many of them were compromised, or we think they were compromised because of the flexible tube in there. We had to secure a number of them after the storm. Thanks for folks that made us aware of it. It's pretty easy to smell propane though when you're going down the street. It was not a comfortable feeling on Tuesday. We think we had all the propane tanks, and we think we had the sewer system going, although we're saying, well, how about the propane tanks that nobody saw, you know, that kind of thing. And then on Thursday, we have a force main water intake from Brunswick County to be compromised, and then all the assorted worry that goes with that. You know, you can just kind of visualize a contractor, not to stereotype anybody, checking to make sure there's no siding, flipping a lit cigarette down, blowing a leaking propane tank up, and where our water system's compromised, can't put it out. So anyway, when the wheels get loose, sometimes they fall off. This case, we were fortunate to be able to get them to the lug nuts tightened back on before anything horribly wrong happened. Renters insurance or vacationers insurance, I learned this, it does not kick in unless there's a mandatory evacuation. Didn't know that. We'll just put that one in. I guess everybody else knew that. I did not.
I'm not sure what relevance that has to the town. I mean, when I heard about the mandatory evacuation of renters, I thought it was an appropriate thing to do because it, again, limited the impact to the sewer. So the residents were, you know, we were further protected, but What's the purpose of that bullet? I'm just, is it just a, oh, by the way?
Well, the property managers thought it was really important when we were talking to them, and I guess that we didn't have as many renters at the end of September as we would at Labor Day if we had an early season storm. That would, we would get a lot of pressure, I believe, from renters on that if we didn't, issue the mandatory evacuation. Matter of fact, we were really particular in the way we crafted the evacuation order so that it's specified in there for vacate or
Do weekly
vacationers.
vacation renters,
That's what that's.
do they typically buy that type of insurance? You know, Alan?
It's offered through the rental companies.
Sorry, excuse
me. Out of America.
The way that works is, if the company that the renter is renting through offers the renter an opportunity to buy the insurance, and the renter chooses to buy the insurance, then they're covered. If they choose not to, then they are not covered.
It's a personal property insurance, you know, basically, like,
No, this is occupancy, doesn't have anything to do with personal property. The other thing, and you're right in what you were saying a minute ago about, how does that involve the town and so forth? Well, it involves the town property owners a great deal because, a property owner that has their house sitting there booked for the week, and the town chooses not to issue the mandatory evacuation for those renters, then that property owner loses a week's rent. And that's as simple as I know how to say it. And the renter, sir?
Wouldn't the renter lose if he already paid in advance?
That's what I was trying to explain about the insurance. If they paid in advance and they had insurance and there's a mandatory evacuation, they get their money back. If they didn't choose to buy the insurance, they're out the money, yes. But if there's a mandatory evacuation, the renter gets their money back, the homeowner gets the renter's money. Does that make sense?
And
I just
we
raised-
collect on the occupancy tax.
Yeah, true. Okay, I got that.
I got it.
Starting to get the picture, everybody.
Yeah.
The town gets their money, the renter gets their money, and the
Yeah.
homeowner gets their money.
and you want to be renter
I understand
friendly,
that. I just don't want, I wouldn't expect us to make a decision based on who's getting reimbursed for what. I think it was the right decision based on threat to the sewer system.
I'm getting close to the end here. I would like to point out that our emergency plan is nearsighted. We only address tropical storm type events. We don't take into consideration any of the things like that happened the 2 days after the storm passed with a water service interruption, or Lord forbid, something like a tsunami coming up out of the Puerto Rican Trench. That's, beyond the scope of what we do here, and that's by design. I just want to make sure that when those types of things, if they occur, are going to be reactive in nature.
Let me ask you, Mr. Hewitt, make sure I understood what you said. An emergency due to a storm is an automatic implementation of all this stuff. But that's not the only thing.
That's right.
So whenever we say emergency, it's any kind of situation that's deemed an emergency. You got a nuclear plant down here.
Sunny Point.
So you got all these issues out there. And we, the town may be told, or common sense may determine that we need to put this plan, or part of this plan, into action, because it is an emergency program. It is not a hurricane tropical storm program.
There are a number of issues that have been broached in the after-action report, but I'd like to leave you with three major takeaways. The first being is that the sewer system issues, in my opinion, by far and above, that's the town's Achilles heel. The operations, and as a storm affects it, those issues hamstring or come into play on every decision that's made during an emergency, hurricane emergency type scenario. Some of the fixes that we've talked about with the sewer system vulnerability effort, some of those may improve that situation. It's going to depend on the severity of the storm and to what degree we might implement some improvements, if any. Our reentry process on the decals, I think that the protocol for controlling access through the bridge is fine, but we need to look hard at how the decals are meted out to property owners. And of course, the low-hanging piece of fruit there that I think we can handle is the website upgrades and fixes there, so we can increase vulnerability. Yes, sir.
I should have said it before, but what I'd like to do is recognize, I thought the police at the bottom of that bridge did an outstanding job.
Yeah.
For those number of days. There were folks that they had pulled over that on a bright sunny day I wouldn't want to come across the bridge. So,
Yeah.
compliments to the job that they did. I know some folks gave them a hard time and I just think the police did a great job. I really do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I would like to add that before you change the decal process of how they're obtained, maybe more emphasis be placed on the requirement for the decal to get back home. There's a lot of people who drove here not realizing they need the decal till they got here. Now, whether or not they got it, I'm pretty sure they did. I got mine in my water bill. I do every year. That process works fine.
Yeah, I think part of that is communications, but part of that is website. I think, if we fix the website and make it more in your face and put some communications of why, you need the decal to get back on the bridge, why we're doing a curfew, why, and we wouldn't get how many 150 emails. So the communication that we did with frequency was excellent. And I don't expect the mayor to put in why and everything, but, if it's on the website and people understood, the bridge closes when it's 45 miles per hour. I don't know where that information is or if it was ever communicated, which I'm not faulting.
It's you got to look for it.
Buried, yeah. So I'm not faulting anyone on that. But the curfew seemed to be a major issue, but if people understand why there's a curfew, that would have gone a long way of them understanding. There's some things that you may not have thought about that people aren't supposed to be, roaming the streets when there's an emergency. But I would put it on the website, not anything else.
Hey, Larry.
Dave, it would be helpful, I think, if the residents knew how high the water was, because we have some lines on our garage doors. Was it 5 feet, or was it?
It's 5 to 7 feet. I mean,
Don't we have a more accurate mark? I mean, I just figured exactly how high it was in the garage.
yeah, at your house, it's going to be different than it is.
By 2 feet, really?
Yeah, because the island, it may be at the window sill at your house, but down the street at Lou's house, it might have just got over
How
the.
high was it above the high tide mark?
Well, it's a storm surge about 5 to 7 feet, and you can go in the canal subdivisions, and even in those canal subdivisions, at some houses it was 40 inches, at other houses it was 50 inches. I mean, it depends on where you were and how the topography a
How
work
high
session.
was it at this town hall?
5 feet.
No, we didn't
5
have
feet.
any
In the
water here.
intercoastal, in the intercoastal,
We're,
it was
we're,
5
we're,
feet.
we're in an A zone, the land's higher here.
I'm saying, is there not a mark on the bridge someplace,
No.
something that says how high the water went, really?
It's different all over the island.
I'm saying, you know, the Weather Channel says we're going to have a, 3 to 5 foot storm surge. And it would be nice to know what it was as opposed to 5 to 7 feet. I think they forecasted.
Well,
But it's
now,
different and all over the island, it's
Yeah,
different.
and you also, a 3 to 5 foot storm surge, you also have to add in 20 inches of rain on top of that. So, I mean, there's those compounding issues. I mean,
So we don't have a real accurate number that we can plan for in the future, right? I mean, some of us had water up in our cars and we wouldn't have.
Depends on the tide as well.
Well, I know, a 6 foot tide is pretty high for bulkheads, right?
yeah.
It was 3 feet above that. So,
Well, you gotta remember too, on Thursday, it was supposed to go back to Miami. Yeah.
Yeah, but
so the town doesn't have it, we don't have anything other than 5 to 7 feet.
Mr. Evans can talk elevations to you.
Yeah, if you want to know how high it was at your house, then you simply only need to get the elevation certificate of your house. It'll tell you where grade is above datum, which is the average point out there in the land ocean. And then all you have to do then is measure from your grade up to where that mark is on your garage door.
I know where that is, Tim, but
Okay, well,
now I'd like to equate what that was at the town. I know how high my house is and how much water was in the garage. So the town doesn't want to say how much was there because it was a 2 foot variation. I have trouble believing that.
Yes, sir.
On the issue of communication, I was down here, the emails were frequent, they were abundantly clear ahead of time, days ahead of time about the requirement to have decals, tax bill, water bill, nothing else was gonna do to get across the bridge. I don't know what the percentage of property owners subscribe to the automatic emails, but I find it to be extremely useful. And anybody who drove here not knowing whether they could cross the bridge and what they needed, they need to get on your email list. I went to the website a couple of times because I didn't need to go any more frequently because I was getting regular communication from the town that told me what I needed to know. I had renters here who left, I had renters who were coming, and I felt I was fully informed, and as things change, position change.
Did the town explore text messaging for the period when power was out? Because for those in the area, we couldn't get emails, but like when the county, I signed up for their emergency service on the water main break, I was getting both emails and text messages, so if I had lost power on my antiquated flip phone, I would still get text messages.
And we did not, but that is one of those things that we're gonna work into, our solution. I believe you provided that to us. If it wasn't you, somebody else.
Couple of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt. Are we on number 9? Mr. Hewitt, you're still up, sir. Resolution
Number 10,
16.
right?
No, 9. We're on 9.
This is the
Resolution.
This is the resolution authorizing the town's applicant for FEMA reimbursements. You know, this is part of the process. We have to have a belly button to make application, an official point of contact to make application for our, all of our categories, A through G FEMA reimbursement damages. And this resolution would authorize myself and Mandy Lochner to be the signatories on those reimbursement requests.
Everybody understand that? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, is unanimous. Mr. Hewitt, I believe you're still up, sir, about the engineer.
Yes, sir. The sewer system vulnerability study, the board had requested additional information from the sole input, which was Compass Point, Michael Norton et al. I communicated with Mr. Norton, and he actually informed me that he went back and listened to the tape of the board meeting and has provided the inputs in front of you tonight in response to that, to y'all's dialogue the other night.
Yeah, glad to hear that. I mean, he addressed the question of system analysis and risk assessment, so, hope, that also needs to be part of the focus of when he actually performs the work. So, thank you very much for doing that.
The one thing I didn't see was them providing us a priority based on risk. Did I miss that somewhere?
Would that be a part of the risk assessment they're gonna perform though?
Are you asking what is,
Are they going to provide us a priority of corrective action based on risk? That's what we talked about last
yeah, I
meeting.
thought I read something to that effect.
Talk about alternatives for mitigating vulnerability. And, I never saw prioritizing the,
Okay.
based on risk. Now, maybe that's something our public works director could
In the, on
determine.
page 14, I'm looking at page 14, the last paragraph there, it's talking about evaluation, and evaluation regarding associated time and cost, and that continues over the top of the next
bottom-
I
page,
see it.
risk
At
and
the bottom of
benefits.
15, he says
Most common
specifically,
failure modes, I got it.
Yep.
they will be
All
related
right.
to levels of risk and associated costs.
Thank you.
So what's the next step, David, to approve this?
If
Contract?
you're this isn't a contract, this is a proposal, and the next step would be to have a contract prepared for y'all's review and consideration. And if it's your desire to use them, we can work towards that and anticipate having that for the December meeting. I would assume that would be a logical.
Do we need to vote on that?
It would,
I mean, do we need a resolution for it, or can we just by
I think by
Consensus.
affirmation
information?
that,
Consensus is yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, okay, yes. on my-
That's what you want to do.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Commissioner Kaiser, in favor? So we have everybody. Okay, 5 out of 5.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Royal, number 11.
Yes, I became aware of one of the responsibilities the board commissioners has is to, since the town manager reports directly to the board, that, by the way, for those of you in attendance, I did prepare an excerpt from the Code of Ordinances that details the town government officials' duties as well as the town manager's duties. So the commissioners have a responsibility to oversee the town manager, since he is a direct report and the only direct report to the commissioners. And these are all supported by the town ordinances. They've listed here the town manager duties. Of course, his responsibility is to oversee all the town departments, programs, and operations pursuant to all the ordinances that the town has. Since he is responsible for providing guidance and oversight of all the staff here at the town, he serves as the primary personnel officer and provides general oversight of all the departments. He is also, his duties are listed as preparing the recommended annual town budget, providing all other management services to assure the efficient and effective operation of town government, working closely with local elected and appointed officials and citizen volunteers to maximize the ability of the town to effectively serve its citizens, and then serves at the pleasure of the mayor and board of commissioners subject to a mutually approved employment contract. I've not seen that contract, but that's listed as one of the duties of the town manager. So, based on the ordinances of the town, accountability of the manager to the commissioners is established, and it's now where I'm going to share my views. I've given you all the background of what the ordinances say, but in my view, since the accountability of the managers is to the commissioners, it is incumbent on the commissioners to develop to have a set of performance objectives through which we would measure accountability of the town manager. In other words, it's my opinion that we should not be evaluating the town manager based on subjective data, that since the duties are clearly defined in the, or you can argue if they're clearly defined, but they are defined in the ordinances, and it's my belief that we should have performance objectives developed so we can fairly and equitably and meaningfully evaluate the town manager's performance. That's another way of saying it is meaningful and equitable performance objectives are those that are derived from job responsibilities and are distinct and measurable. And lastly, I believe objectives should include manager input to support ownership as well. This is my experience from my professional experience of being evaluated routinely on performance. So I give all this background information to just to support a motion that I will make that I move that the Board of Commissioners direct the town manager to develop performance objectives for the commissioners' review at the next regular meeting based on the duties that I've detailed here. And
Royal, as that would typically be something that would be evaluated in a closed session for personnel reasons. So
Right.
though the criteria may be developed in open session, the commissioners as a body would discuss that in closed session.
I fully support that, and I would expect that. Thank you. Yeah, what I'm asking is well, I'll ask your opinion. Are the performance objectives themselves something that should be closed session?
I think that depends on the commissioners. Other boards do this different ways. Obviously you can't collaborate as a group because then you have to have a properly noticed meeting, but you could assign each of, you could split into groups of two to determine what the objectives are that you would like to see from the town manager or the town attorney or any other person that reports directly to you, and then evaluate the town manager on that in closed session. However you would like to do it. David, don't know if you have a preference.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, so somewhere along, we've got to have a second to continue this, or we'll be here for a year or two.
I second the motion.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Now discuss it any way you want to.
Yeah, I'll just say the purpose of my motion is to develop objective levels of performance measurement so that we can fairly and equitably basically carry out our responsibility as outlined in the ordinances.
David, are you in a position, are you comfortable with doing this, preparing your own set and then bringing it to the board? Or would you prefer have two of the commissioners work with you to do that?
It would help if I had a little bit, if the pump was primed a little bit, instead of it being reflective of what I think. I'd probably be in a better position to react a bit more and to add that in. So if that can be accomplished by having a commissioner or two to serve as the lead on that, that would probably be a good thing.
I have
Okay.
a major concern here. We've got the holidays. You, sir, are working with, trying to get us some help on the finances of the storm damage and all, meeting with federal people and all, and some other issues that you have going on. I don't know how much time you have to participate with basically 3 weeks of working time instead of 4 because of the holidays. I don't know, but whatever you guys want to do is fine with me. I just concerned about whether you have time to do it before the next meeting, or maybe the next meeting would be considered. Because his evaluation, when is his evaluation gonna be? What,
Well, that's another thing we have to decide, because it's, to my knowledge, it's yet to be scheduled. So that was why I started with, rather than scheduling the evaluation, I said, I don't think it's appropriate to have one without performance objectives that our town manager has committed to. So that's also another item that has to be scheduled.
So really, you're proposing the first step?
Yes.
Right.
So could you change that to, motion to make this a January meeting input? Which gives us 2 months to work with,
Yeah, that would be fine.
But that just means in January, we have the objectives, it's not the actual review.
Correct.
right.
Well, we're in a bit of a dilemma here, in my opinion, is that this is probably something we should have done a year ago, or it should have been done earlier, because I don't want to develop performance objectives and then you're immediately accountable to them for the past year. That's not the purpose of, the performance objectives are meant to be something that we agree to, that you agree to, Mr. Manager, and then you work toward meeting those objectives throughout the year. I'm just laying out the first step that I think is appropriate. It may mean that we don't evaluate you until the end of 17, but to me, that would be better than just putting together an evaluation for evaluation's sake. I didn't see anything in the ordinances that said anything about frequency of these evaluations. I don't even know when the last one was. Do you, Mr. Manager or Madam Clerk?
It was at least 2 years.
Okay.
There may be a requirement in the contract, I don't know.
Okay. So there's a lot of things here. So I'll amend my motion that we as a board assist the town manager in developing performance objectives for 2017, and that we have those objectives complete for our January. I would like for it to be for the December meeting, so at least you're able to read them, and because by January, then we're 11 months. It'll essentially equate to 11 months of term. So I'll amend my motion that we assist you on development of performance objectives for 2017 with the objectives due at our December regular commissioners meeting.
I take it that you want to withdraw the first motion.
Well, I was amending it, but
Change the date.
yeah,
But you're saying, you just now said December meeting,
yes.
correct? Okay, we've got the Thanksgiving holiday, that December meeting, wait a minute, let me finish. Our next meeting is December 20th, which is, 5 days before Christmas. We've got the start of the Central Reach project starting which he's heavily involved with. And we've got the contract that he's gotta work up with this engineering firm so that we can have that ready for our next board meeting, which again should be a major thing that he should be working on. I just see that we're putting an awful lot on his plate before the next meeting.
Well,
And to me, getting the contract done for the storage is more important than getting his evaluation objectives done. I understand his objectives are important, but getting our sewer system fixed because of the vulnerability this island has because of the design is significant.
yeah, I understand there's always work to be done, and I hear your point, Mr. Commissioner. I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'll start all over since you.
As I said, you'd like to withdraw your motion.
I will withdraw my motion.
I
And
agree.
the seconder makes and agrees with you. So now you've got the floor to make your
Okay.
motion.
I move the Board of Commissioners develop performance objectives for the town manager for the year 2017, and that those objectives be developed by our December regular board meeting.
Is there a second?
Did you say the December meeting?
Yes.
So the only change is there'll be no input from David into his evaluation.
Well, you know, I'm just trying to get his performance objectives. Do we have a second? Are we not in
No, sir.
discussion, Mr. Mayor?
No, sir, we don't.
Okay.
I'll give you a second. I second that.
Now we do, sir, go ahead.
Okay. You know, it's my firm belief that we have our responsibilities are defined in the ordinance. I mean, that's defined. We don't have a choice. And in my view, we've really abdicated our responsibilities for the last year. So we're a year late now. I started my motion with the town manager submitting to us his proposed performance objectives. If that is going to inordinately impact his ability to perform his duties, then okay. So the reason I'm making my motion now that the Board of Commissioners develop them is that we can alleviate him of that responsibility, but we still have the responsibility to evaluate his performance. And it's my view we should do it with a set of objective measures based on the duties that are defined in our ordinances. So that's the background behind the motion. If we want, I'll be happy to draft those for the board's review at next board meeting, but I do not want to defer this any longer. It's already late.
And I don't think it's gonna be reinventing the wheel, because there are other, performance objectives for town managers out there. And then at least
Yep.
he would have the objectives starting in January.
I mean, this,
You mentioned the board reviews. Could it also include the town manager's review?
of the objectives?
Yes.
Yeah, sure, but, you know, I'm just one member. The objectives aren't,
No, I understand.
they aren't approved until the board approves them.
Yep.
So if we want to have him review them at the same time the board does, I'm fine with that.
Right.
Any more discussion?
Yes,
Hearing none-
Mr. Mayor, I'm in favor of developing the objectives, but I'm not in favor of delaying till the end of 2017 of having a review of the town manager's performance. In the absence of this measurable thing we have, the series of duties that he has is extensive, and I'm not uncomfortable sitting as a board and saying, how did he do on these jobs? Without the measurable performance objectives that we will develop. So I would, while I'm happy to do to develop performance objectives, I would also like to early in the next year just have a performance appraisal to say how's he doing on his job. absence of those.
Well, we're taking this a piece at a time. This is just to develop performance
Right,
objectives.
exactly.
We can certainly, in fact, my experience is we have quarterly reviews so it's not a one-time only and you find out at the end of the year that your performance has either been stellar or otherwise. So my motion is just for the performance objectives
You second
themselves.
I second it, yes. Closing
We
this
ready for a
discussion.
vote? Think we're ready for a vote?
You guys ready to vote? Any more discussion?
Could you
Mr.
reread what
Kaiser.
we're voting on, because I'm not sure what it is.
For the Board of Commissioners to develop performance objectives for the town manager for the year 2017, and those objectives be developed by the December regular Board of Commissioners meeting.
Okay.
You ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's unanimous. Mr. Hewitt, do you understand what they're expecting you to help them with? Madam Clerk, you got that? So the next meeting that we have in this room, they'll be printed out. Do we know who's gonna do that?
I'll be happy to draft them up.
It's whatever you commissioners want. I mean,
Yep, that's fine.
all right. Okay, we're gonna move along then. Number 12. Fire ordinance, Mr. Freer.
That's me. I'm still awake.
Before we move on, I want to make sure I'm clear. I would like to confer with the town manager as I'm developing these, because this isn't the first time he's done it. So by
That-
consensus, does the board?
That's why I asked
Okay.
that the board and the manager be included in this
Well, the board,
process.
in developing them, the board cannot be involved. Otherwise, we got a meeting we have to schedule.
No, I think another board member
Two
can.
ideas.
Two,
Okay,
Operate pairs of two.
we can do
All
it in
right.
twos.
okay.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so the last meeting, we talked about our open burning ordinance and as a guide using Ocean Isle's updated ordinance. Mr. Evans was going to take the lead on that, and he is taking the lead, and you have
I got some things.
some issues for discussion, right? Okay.
This has not been a long enough meeting. I would like to hijack the meeting for a minute. I'm gonna give a little brief report, and then I'll get to the fire, if that's okay with the board.
Sure.
Okay, we had our 5th annual contractors informational meeting this year. We had over 90 participants at the meeting. That's where we have the contractors and real estate agents and people who are actually involved in construction and development within the town. They actually come to the meeting. We had 6 guest speakers this year. We had, one of the speakers was actually the new Director of Inspections for the county. We had Dan Woodbreaker from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, who we work with regularly on a regular basis for the NFIP and the CRS. He's the engineer that oversees those types of programs. We had Joel Macon from the North Carolina Licensing Contractors Board. He's a field rep and an investigator. We had a field rep and investigator from North Carolina Mechanical and Plumbing Board. And we had a field rep, Mr. Roy Wilson, from the North Carolina Electrical Contractors Board. We did a 8-hour seminar. Local electricians that came got 4 hours of free credit, so they don't have to go out of town and get that in other places. It was probably the biggest success that we had yet. We spent a total of almost the entire time on instructions, everything from going over why you shouldn't park on the sidewalks, where we had the police involved, to a discussion about how you should build structures so that we can reduce the repetitive loss for CRS. It's one of those things that I started when I got here. It's been a success, and because it's been a success is because of these ladies right here. I would like to recognize, as done We had other help from staff, from Christy and Margaret and Heather. They were helped do a whole bunch of things, everything from registering folks when they came to the door to making sure that we got got them set up and ready to go. Chris's guys who helped set up the room and bring stuff over, they were a help, so the town was a big part of that. With that said, I'm gonna get back to where I started, where I was supposed to be, okay? The fire ordinance, I called, some of the folks that I'd heard that were interested in having some input, and one of my biggest conversations was, I held 2 conversations with the police chief, and I held 1 conversation for quite a long period of time with, David Ward, who's the captain over at the fire department. And what we decided, we came to some conclusions about what we thought the town might want to see and what the fire department wanted to see that they thought would best help with their situation. And we came up with some specific language or non-specific language that we thought that if y'all were interested in, that we would put into an ordinance. But it only left us with the enforcement portion, which I believe that it would be up to the board after talking to the North Carolina Department of Insurance as to who you actually wanted to enforce this. It could be either the police, it could be zoning, it could be our fire inspectors who they don't think they can, but according to DOI, I talked to them this afternoon, it wouldn't be a conflict. Or it could be our staff, or it could be all. So that was a bone of contention about who would do it, but I think we understand now that we can pretty much pick qualified people or non-qualified people to enforce it. And everybody else there is qualified. They're either in zoning, you know what I mean? But you could pick anyone to enforce it that's, I guess, sworn in to enforce town rules. The specific language that we came up with, or non-specific language was that we would have no gas grills or on covered decks or under structures located in Holden Beach with or without sprinklers. And that was a specific one that David Ward wanted to have in there. We then went on to a discussion that led us to say that we might also want to put in there that we have no charcoal or open flame grills or stationary or temporary open flame devices of any kind on decks or under any structures. And then we had some exceptions in there. We thought that might be nice to have some exceptions in there for stationary things that might be secured, that were UL approved. Some people like to have, those sealed fireplaces, you know what I mean? Those will be UL approved. We just like to get in the house and have to be put in per those requirements and what would be safe. And what we decided on was that we actually came to the conclusion, looking at other, after I talked to them, and then I went back and looked at other ordinances, and then went back, we actually came to the conclusion that this, if you wanted to, you could simplify this ordinance to simply say you can have no gas grills, no charcoal open flame grills, or stationary or temporary open flame devices of any kind within 5 feet of the structures. If you did that, it put them off the back decks, it put them off the covered decks, it put them out from underneath the houses, which was the primary concern of the fire department, and puts them away from the structures. So that means that you would be able to grill in the backyard and the front yard. So it could be written just that easily. Or you can be specific about where you don't want it. So that's where we're at with it. So I can bring you an ordinance back for your review and approval, and we can have it set up so that the ordinance represents, of course, it'll go through Noel first, and we'll have the enforcement portion in there, and she'll get the language right. So I think we can do this.
I have a couple questions, and just for a discussion point, the gas grills, do people have outside kitchens currently with gas grills under a deck? I draw a distinction between a gas grill and a charcoal grill.
I have seen some that were put in that were not legal. I have seen some gas grills that actually had, that would, I don't know whether you consider them legal or not, that would actually have permanent stations like built around them. I've seen that.
Yeah.
With a lot of time, free time. But there shouldn't be any kind of a device down there below the BFE, you know what I mean? That type of device, but it's possible that they're down there.
Yeah, I just draw a very distinct, I think the charcoal grills have more of a tendency to be abused, if you will, or misused by, squirting the fluid on. I think gas grills, I think a lot of people would have a gas grill on a deck, to be honest with you. So I think it's a little bit, I'm not too comfortable with the gas grill. I'm totally comfortable with the,
You're totally comfortable with no charcoal open flame grills or stationary or temporary open flame devices on any deck or any structure?
absolutely, absolutely.
And we might want to make sure we're not
And-
including a UL-approved grill, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's my opinion. I'd like to hear the other folks' opinion on that.
Well, I agree. I think the risk of fire from a gas grill is far less than the risk of fire from a charcoal grill, where you have embers, and, I mean, the risk is just distinctly different in my view. Another question that came to my mind was propane devices that heat water. I mean, those also have the same function. You can cut the flame off. Would that be considered an open flame device?
Yeah, are you talking about like one of those burners that you put a pot on, you cook?
Exactly.
Boil your shrimp in?
Yep.
Yeah, I would think that would be considered an open flame device.
Okay.
But-
I would see that as on the same risk level or less than a grill.
So we talked, I'll tell you what, me and David talked about this very thing. David was adamant that the fire department would really like to see the open flame devices removed from underneath houses and off the decks. And I agree with him 100%. When we had the discussion about the grills, you could have an exemption for the grills if we can come to a conclusion of what they actually are, so that we can exclude them but not get rid of the open flame stuff that would still be dangerous. And that's where we were at.
Okay.
And that's why I had it written the way I do, is that's where we were at.
Well, maybe one way of addressing it would be the source of the flame. Like, any wood product that includes charcoal, those things that provide the heat by combustion of the material versus, a
Propane
open
tank?
flame that's fueled by propane. That would be an option.
Any carbon-based fuel?
Yeah.
That's
Uh, And just to further cloud the issue, I think I heard one time, sometimes we end up finding a solution in search of a problem. This issue we're talking about, we had a fire, we've had multiple fires on the island that were caused by improper use of a stove with, oil that reached its flash point. So where I come down on a lot of these issues is what is the responsibility of the user versus what code are we going to enact to prevent them from being, as best we can, irresponsible. And
Yeah.
so that's where I'm gonna come down is and just, and Tim, it sounds like you've done a lot of work. I'm not poking holes at what you said, but the 5 feet from a structure, decks, my deck's 8 feet wide, and, I could still, so whatever we decide, we're gonna have to be clear on what it means. And then I think it's incumbent on us to look at the impact on the island for residents as well as renters. Not being able to use a grill would be a factor. I'll just put it at that.
But when you are able to use a propane grill, and I agree, I'm not trying to make it as, you know, the fire department would like no fires anywhere, you know, I agree. You know, I know firemen, but when you know, I like Tim's idea about, you know, with the exception of a propane grill, that is, you know, it's a nice compromise.
If it's covered, if it's got it covered, if you can cover the flame,
Right.
then you should not be in a position where you're gonna have an open flame. Most UL-approved grills are gonna have a cover on it.
Right.
They'll be closable, but I've racked my brains in the last 2 or 3 weeks trying to think if I've ever seen an open flamed grill other than the Bunsen burner type that you set a pot on. They're the only ones I ever see. I call them the backer barn burners, because that's what they all look like. They're round and, you know what I mean? We used to make them ourselves with milk crates. We might have patented them today. But they are very dangerous. And if you want to see a good example of how dangerous they are, is to just go online and type in turkey fry. Because everyone is using that fry. And just watch what's happening. You might want to look away.
Yeah.
But, yeah, those things may even be more dangerous than the charcoal, seriously.
Yeah, you're right, and mostly because of the oil, you know.
The whole explodes once it reaches temperature, it starts blowing out.
But if you're boiling for home brew, it's different. No, I'm only kidding.
But see, if you remember, there's a lot of grills out there now that actually have covers, they have open burners on the side, but they have covers.
True.
So you still have the capability of, you know, boiling them shrimp outside on that type of burner, but it closes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's actually regulated because it's UL approved. You can't make the flame come this high.
And all we're saying, it's got to be away from the structure. I mean, you know, yeah.
So do you think the fire department is okay though with propane type grills on a porch?
I don't know if they are. I can't, it was
So we
fine
start
when-
making exceptions, you see what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's
And
right.
we make an exception for that if we don't say
The-
where they can have it.
Yeah, but I think that, my impression from David was they were more concerned with charcoal grills and open flame grills. You know, it's like he said, that if it was up to them, you know, you wouldn't be able to go outside and strike a match, to light a cigarette, you know what I mean? Anything that would, I mean, just to the fact that they wanted to emphasize with or without sprinklers tells you how serious they are about you not having it. And that was David's language.
I have to agree with a lot of what Ashley was saying. You have to hold people that are using something responsible for their actions. You look at some of the fires we've had. We had a fire started by someone who emptied an ashtray into the trash can. It started smoldering, so they put it back outside on their wooden deck and caused the house to burn down. We had a house burned down with the two houses on either side because of construction work that was going on inside that left something that shouldn't have been left.
Yeah, leaf blowers.
I mean, so most of our fires haven't been from that. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying people have to be responsible. It's like saying you can't have a sharp knife in your house because you may cut yourself. You have to be responsible for how you're using that tool. And so I have to agree with a lot of what Ashley's saying.
Yeah, we
I
don't
don't
need
want
to
to see
make
someone
it
out there
so
spraying a gallon of lighter fluid on a charcoal grill and throwing a match at it from 5 feet away and watching it explode into flames. I've seen that, and that's dangerous. I've seen houses that had charcoal grills underneath them that had flames shooting 6 foot in the air because of the amount of charcoal fluid they put on it. I can.
And that's what
Totally
that's what
agree.
we're addressing, I think. That's what we want to
should be
address.
addressing.
Right, I think that's what
It's
we're addressing.
irresponsible use of
And you can, I mean, you can go as far as, I see one ordinance where it says if you're cooking on a gas grill, it has to be an attendant. There has to be somebody there with you. So, well, you laugh, you laugh, but there's actually provisions in the fire code that says if you're gonna burn something in your yard,
Yeah.
more than 3 feet in a circle, somebody's gotta be there and you gotta have a means to extinguish it. So, you know what I mean? Visions go wild, regulations go wild, but you just tell me what you wanna do and I'll do it.
No, I think your suggestion of, the propane, we don't want to include that, in my opinion. The other thing you mentioned, and UL approved fire pits. Now, a lot of people, and I'm one of them, have built a fire pit. It's not UL approved, but it's you built a fire pit in your backyard.
You'll be there tomorrow morning.
So people, people have fire pits that are built out of concrete and that are,
Have you read the ordinance?
yeah, they don't see.
What does it say about fire pits in the backyard and stuff like that?
Can't have them. Well, there's dozens of them on this island.
I know.
There's
We've
dozens
had
of
several
them.
people, I think it says something about if it's not UL approved, it has to be approved by me, and I don't approve anything that ain't UL approved.
And you gotta have a permit from the police chief to have an open fire.
Yeah, well, it's not being, it's not being enforced or, I'm not the only one.
We have people call me all the time, and if they can get one of those UL approved ones that actually has a regulator on it and that kind of stuff, that controls it, and some of them even have oxygen depletion sensors, I guess, if it's inside the building 10 or whatever. But there are some that we could approve under the ordinance, but a homemade one, I don't know that we could.
Okay.
Yeah.
If the commissioners want to open this to the audience, we have some hands been raised. Protocol is,
Sure, I'm okay with it.
yes, sir. You're up.
As an owner of 2 rental properties, I would love to have a regulation, an ordinance that prohibits open flame within 5 feet, 25 feet. I had educated idiots almost burn down my house last year. When I was there when they came, I showed them the grills 25 feet behind the house. I explained that I have an electric grill they could use under the house, but if they were using an open flame, the grills were 25 feet behind the house. During their stay, a 30-some-year-old son, they went out and bought a small charcoal grill. He had it on the deck right by the elevator door. It burned through 1 3/4 treated wood, a hole that big. And I had explained to these people, and if y'all get an ordinance, I will have in my rental agreement that if you violate that ordinance and you or the fire chief or the police chief or whoever's got responsibility contacts me, that's ground for automatic eviction and whatever penalty and charge that comes along. Grills are the biggest aggravation I have, and I'd be interested to hear what Alan has to say as handling a lot of properties.
You mean open flame grills?
Yeah, I provide an electric grill that's got
I
no.
just want to clarify what he's saying, an open flame, which I think you guys are saying.
That's what we're
Yeah, okay.
addressing exactly what you're talking about.
Does a Weber gas grill with a cover, is that open flame or not?
No.
I think if it's gas, we can distinguish between gas and charcoal. The fire department nor I would want to see a charcoal fueled grill.
No, but gas is what I'm saying.
Yeah, gas would be covered. If it's
So
got a
you
lid on
can't
it.
have a covered gas grill
Yeah, and
under your,
let me tell you the difference, and most people know it, I don't have to tell them, but the difference between a UL approved grill is it's gonna have a regulator on it that's gonna operate that propane gas somewhere between 11 PSI, well, some people say 15, but it's not, it's between 11 PSI and according to what type of burner they have, 2 PSI, which means that we don't, and they fail safe. They've been using regulators for millions of years, they usually fail safe, which means they fail close, which means you're not gonna have one open wide open and give you the full pressure on that tank. And so what happens is that you can't develop a flame that's big enough, inside that type of a grill to really cause a fire outside that lid. Now, charcoal or any kind of carbon-based fuel like wood or charcoal or pellet fuel, which we have, I've seen one of those over here, you literally can create as big a flame as you want to, either by the liquid fuel you're using to light it, or by whatever you're cooking on it if you want to walk away from it. But it's really got no way to even regulate the heat. Once it starts, you either gotta have a squirt bottle or, wait to the end. But the biggest problem with it is the flame is not contained. It is not a containable flame. The wind blows by and here goes a spark. You know what I mean? Most of these grills have holes in them for air, stuff moves around, shifts to the right, here comes a piece of charcoal out on the deck. You know what I mean? It's really the open flame grills, but that type of grill you're talking about, I would consider as being exempt under an open flame grill.
Well, the shrimp boiler I was talking about also has a regulator on it.
But it's an open flame, you don't have any way to cover. And I'll tell you what else they don't have, you can regulate them up and down, you know what I mean? But they are literally above any kind of container. They're just sitting there. You just sit right on it. It's open.
Well, we had this issue a lot when I was a property manager. And the only way that the homeowner can control the charcoal grills is if you put a park grill in this with a cement base, so then they can't move. Because wherever you put the Weber grill or whatever kind of grill you have, you're gonna find them on the back decks or under the house, and then enforcement is gonna be an issue, because you're not gonna see them. I mean, I've seen them licking under the carport and the flames licking the deck boards. But unless you have a stationary one like a park grill, they can move them wherever they want, and then how are you gonna enforce it?
And even when you had a park grill, because I had one,
They found a way.
they'll go buy their own little grill because they don't like it out in the yard, and they'll bring it up and sit it on the deck or.
Yeah, we've got quite a
Somewhere.
few places that have the park grills, and that came up in the discussion today.
But the neighbor that lives 10 feet away can call the police department and you can enforce it. So that's the issue. Because our neighbor, you live 10 feet away from that house that's being rented.
One house goes up,
Right.
Yeah, we're a powder keg here. We took out 3 houses with a leaf broke.
Yep.
We really did.
Okay, so you're going to come back then with this input, Tim, and with an ordinance for us to vote on?
I'll try to get with Noel, we'll finalize the ordinance, and I assume if that's okay with y'all. And then, because there's gonna need to be some penalties put in there, and we're going to, yes, enforcement recognized.
Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Are we done on this subject?
Yes.
Are you bringing that back at the next meeting, or do you have a deadline?
Next meeting? Okay.
All right. Number 13, budget calendar. Mr. Freer.
Yeah, so I just wanted to really discuss and there's the copy in the back of the budget, of the current budget calendar. I just have two things I'd like to point out in the budget calendar. I'd like to have a discussion about it and then hopefully direct the town manager to make some changes. One change I would like to make is, and what we're looking at was the previous year budget schedule and process. I would like to do the goals and capital programs as soon as possible. And if January or February is okay, and I know it's based, David, around when information is available, but I feel that we should do it sooner rather than April. My other comment about the schedule and process is, I would like to, therefore, if we do it earlier, I would like to have the board be more involved in the process in a greater level of detail and include a workshop for the board in the process. And I'll open it up to other board members.
At what point are you thinking about a workshop?
Are you making a motion that we adopt this schedule?
No, I'm directing the town manager who develops this schedule, who gave us the schedule last year, to update the schedule with the two things I mentioned. Start earlier, and to include a workshop with the Board of Commissioners. And I would, to answer your question, I would do it after the revenues, so
discussion,
Yeah, before the message.
correct?
Are we just discussing the concept, or is this a motion? I can go either way.
Let me ask a question, please. Is it the consensus of the board that town manager follow the directive as suggested by Mr. Freer?
Yes.
Yes.
You got that, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
All right. Ready to move on?
Yep.
Well, I have a question about it. I would envision more steps than what we discussed, but are you looking at adopting this like it is?
I'm not adopting, this was given us,
I understand this, but
so I'm making a suggestion to the town manager. If you have other suggestions, please,
well, I'm kind of
please add them.
asking questions the same type that I was asked when I made my motion. How much earlier are you talking about the goals and capital programs being developed? Like,
I
are you
would-
talking about by February or?
Yeah, I would say,
I'm not-
I would like to schedule January or February. Preferably January, but I understand if it's not, if the information is not available, the end of quarter or whatever information, I prefer it in January.
And the workshop before revenues, so,
After,
after revenues.
Before the
Yep.
budget message.
before the budget message.
Would I be correct in hoping that the revenue would be earlier than 17 May?
Yeah, the whole schedule would be pushed.
So
to-
we'd
pushed to
accelerate this probably a
accommodate-
month?
Pushed to accommodate that workshop. Yeah, I wouldn't expect to do a January goals capital plan and wait until April 20, mid-April to do the canal dredging workshop. I'd expect everything to be pushed up into the calendar.
Well, I just have a question, I guess, of the manager, if you could. We're operating on June,
30.
fiscal years,
June
June,
30th.
right? So when can you, how early can you get your revenue input? I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
Normally, February is good for the ad valorem taxes. But several of the revenues come in, some of them come in monthly, some of them come in quarterly. I think the watermelon through a snake is, the ad valorem tax.
Okay.
And those usually are, we're getting pretty close mid-February. There'll still be some more that come in, mid-February on those ad valorem taxes. Others, it's always a crapshoot with them. Sometimes you just gotta pick a point, and say go with it and understand that they're not in yet. Of course, the later that you go, the better you know what they are. So I think the answer is we can do them anytime. It's just you have to understand there's a greater degree of variability.
Understood.
One thing that I want to make sure or illuminate is that the goals capital programs, if you recall, those were commissioner goals that I had requested. So in some regards, what y'all want to do is the first step in the process is how soon do you want to do that?
Yeah, and I think that we could do that anytime, right?
That's,
So,
yes, that's.
so that's why I'm saying January. That, you're right.
Now, this is last year, so do you see anything else in this that would be different for this upcoming year?
Well, conceptually, if these work for y'all, what the other piece of it needs to be plugged in, of course, are your calendars, because some of these require meetings, and we have to coordinate your calendar. So, I mean, I can come back and, approximate date times of using this as a conceptual back in the steps up. But I'm gonna need to know, in order to pin down date time certain for some of these things, what your availability is. And we can keep that soft, but as a, I guess, a working schematic here, if this is what you want to do, we can angle this way.
And so, yeah, obviously the goal is to start sooner, David.
Right.
The goal is to start sooner. And also adding, the workshop in there, so. Okay.
I mean, if this is what the framework that you want to establish, I don't see anything in there. And if there is something that comes up, I'm gonna let you know that, hey, we need to,
Yep.
we need to back up.
Sounds good.
Everybody in agreement?
We're good.
Are we ready to try again to move on?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Number 14, Town Manager's Report, Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. We received a correspondence from the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, our last, I won't say most recent, because it happened in mid-2013, our community assistance visit. We have received notification that all of the issues resulting from that community assistance visit have been closed out. And those are specifically were unauthorized violation of our flood damage prevention ordinance. And that is very important because it goes to our community rating system, which means that it affects your insurance capabilities on your flood insurance. So we have cleared those out. Everything is in order. Just some specifics on our flood policies. We've got 1,900 policies in place, collecting or paying almost $4 million in premiums annually, worth about $500 million worth of coverage in the NFIP program. The important takeaway from there and we gathered this in Tim's contractors meeting the other day, is we don't have any different information on the effective dates of the new flood maps. We're still looking at January of 2017.
Mr. Hewitt, I'm sorry to back up, but the second bullet here, unauthorized violations, flood damage, you talked about the candy canes earlier. Is that
Those weren't part
relevant
of
to this?
it. That was, they were not captured as part of that site visit.
Okay. So we're vulnerable still if. that came-
Vulnerability is different than exposure.
Okay, so we have no exposure to
We,
candy canes.
from an insurance
Okay,
perspective.
all right, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Water can still come out of them, yeah. We're painting the water tower. We actually held off on the vendor when we went through our little scare with our raw water intake. We held off on that. We didn't want anybody jabbing a hole in that thing while we were in an emergency situation. That thing's well underway now. They've got one of the communication monopoles up. They've got another one going in on the east side. They're going to be spraying within a shroud over the next couple of months to be finished, we're thinking around Easter time. And at the present time, we do not know, we're unsure if there's going to be any impact
to the park use and facilities. We don't think so, but we'll just have to feel our way through that. Went to another FEMA Matthew briefing today and submitted our draft working numbers. We're looking at trying to recoup the expenses for what as yet is not has not been quantified. We've surveyed it, but we think we lost about 1 million cubic yards of sand. That is an estimate on my part, in addition to recouping our get ready and overtime expenses, plus damages, other damages in the neighborhood of about $300,000 to the sewer system. There were some components in the vacuum system triggers that have been compromised, and we should know more on that once the engineers come back with doing the volumetric calculations. The important thing there is that there has not been a declaration made for any other categories of work other than A and B, and that's our goal, is to engage with FEMA and emergency management folks and make sure that those the powers that be that make those declarations are cognizant of what types of damages that we've got here locally. Regarding the Central Reach project, we've received notification. The notification to mariners has gone out. Mobilization will begin on or about the 20th of November, with the dredge plant being in operation on or about the 1st of December. And from what I can ascertain, it's going to be about a 60-day project. Of course, what they have told the Coast Guard and the Corps of Engineers, there's a reason why our permit goes all the way to the 1st of April, even though they're saying they're 60 days in production. 60 days and 1 million plus yards of sand is up in the 20,000 cubic yards a day production. That's a lot of sand going on the beach at one time. Suffice it to say, that dredge plant's going to be operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week once it cranks up until it's finished, barring bad weather or significant breakdowns. I don't know how loud it's going to be yet. I don't know where it's going to come ashore. We've got a meeting, pre-construction meeting scheduled tomorrow. I'll have better information. We'll pass that on to the community where pipes and that type of thing are gonna be laid. I have read the notification, and it looks like there's actually going to be 4 lines. Now, where those lines are, I'm gonna wait until we have the pre-con meeting before I say it's going to be in front of the 800 block or the 600 block on this date certain, that kind of thing. The important piece there is that whenever that dredging operation is ongoing, there will be danger zones on the beach. You don't want to go out in those danger zones where the mud or the sand, not mud, sand, is coming out of the pipe. We will have more information relating to that just as soon as we have the pre-construction meeting. I'm getting close. Wanted to let everybody know that the Grand Strand Area Transportation Study long-range plan has been initiated, and everyone here is invited to a series of meetings that will attempt to update that long-range plan, which is the 2040 long-range plan. And you go, 2040, I'm not going to be here then. This, for those of you that may remember, about 18 months ago, the town joined or was included in the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We are the farthest east of a metropolitan urban area in the Grand Strand urban area, defined Grand Strand urban area. It's important that you get, or we become involved in this process. This process is where the programs and priorities are determined. And if you keep silent, you're gonna be driving on a 2-lane road to Shallotte until 2040, okay? So I would encourage you to get involved, as you may. The meetings locally, it's tomorrow at the Shallotte Town Hall, 12 o'clock to 2 p.m. There's some handouts in the back. There are others locally. I just got this, sorry for the short notice. It's many of you have been to those types of meetings before. It's interactive, come and go and talk to the people there. But I would encourage everyone to get involved if they could and to make your preferences known. Lastly, but not least, recreation programs. We are improving and growing our Bridgeview Dock reservation system. Now we can take reservations and pay for it with credit card. That facility has seen some use. It's good to see those nice cruisers going down to Florida this time of year that are deciding to spend the night with us. The turkey trot is scheduled for Thanksgiving morning at 8 a.m. This is a 1 mile fun walk, 2 miles, we're up, fun walk, and you can, for the benefit, we're partnering with the Brunswick Family Assistance. If you're so inclined, we'll be collecting canned goods here at Town Hall next week. And many of you might have seen, due to the short days, now some of our Christmas lights up on the poles going down the boulevard. We'll have those up shortly. And our tree lighting is the 1st of December at 6 p.m. up at the Jordan Boulevard Pavilion. There will be some entertainment prior to. Other than that, I'm done.
How about the chili cooking?
Chili.
Chili cook-off is, pre-registration, you have to have your chili here by 3:45 on the day of the tree lighting, which is the 1st, and judging will be at 4. And typically, in the past, we have asked the Board of Commissioners and the mayor to assist in judging that, making them tell us who the winners of that are.
December 1st.
Anybody wants to taste the chili at 4 o'clock on the 1st?
They might be the entertainment.
Mr. Hewitt, last meeting we discussed Campbell land use plan, possible update. Is there any word on when we're going to initiate updating that?
I didn't do anything with it. If I was supposed to, I dropped the ball.
Well, it was just a discussion, but it hadn't been updated in a good while, so I was just, that's why I'm asking about it.
We'll put that on the staff's docket to take a look at and
Okay.
provide feedback to the board on it.
Thank you.
Mayor, comments are brief. Yesterday and today were 2 days over at the Blockade Runner facility at Wrightsville Beach, the North Carolina Byways annual meeting, which was very interesting, as the discussion was concentrated in regards to terminal groins and jetties, an update report on what's going on the North Carolina coast. I've been going to a lot of these things for many, many years, and I thought that a couple of those reports are the most enlightening that I've been to in a long, long time. So that was encouraging. Also, report on the windmill possibilities offshore. That seems to be losing favor. If I get off course, you tell me, Christie. But the windmill projects offshore seem to be not as popular an idea as it once was. And those people that are opposed to anything going on in the ocean seem to be relieved of that. One of the hot topics, of course, was the sounding of the bottom offshore, looking for petroleum products. Big controversy continues in regards to the damage it may be doing to the fish and the whales and so forth. But other than that, it was a good turnout, probably the best turnout they've ever had, and a very good event. Other than that, I would say happy Thanksgiving, and ask Mayor Pro Tem to give his report.
I'll be brief as well. I want to thank the town manager and the staff for the work you did on the after-action report. I found it was very detailed. It appeared to be critical. And I would just encourage you there were a lot of statements that said, you know, we've got things to do here. I'd encourage you to take action on those. So the idea being that we learn from this one and we minimize surprises from any future, minimize surprises from, but I thought that was a well-prepared document, and I appreciate the staff working to complete that.
I agree. My thanks to the town manager and town employees for all their hard work and dedication, especially for this report, and thanks everybody for coming.
Ms. Eisenhower?
I just wanted to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Thank you for coming this evening. And again, thank you to the town staff for continuing to clean up after Hurricane Matthew. I know there's a lot that you're still taking care of, and we appreciate that. Also wanted to say thank you to Tom Myers and the Holden Beach Homeowners Association for your updating the Facebook page to give people information after the storm. It was a nice, positive voice, and it helped in the town's effort. I really do appreciate that.
Mr. Fletcher?
Okay, happy Thanksgiving. I wish we had more people here tonight. Thank you for coming and participating. Also hope that as we go forward this year that we get more people volunteering to participate on boards, studies, that sort of thing. We really appreciate it. Thanks.
Mr. Kaiser?
I just want to thank everybody for coming and wish everybody happy Thanksgiving. And I do have one question for David. Do you know, is there been any talk in the county, at the commissioner's level, about maybe developing a secondary water source? I mean, if that one pipe breaks, all of the islands are out of luck, no rentals go on, no tourists are here. It could be like that. If it had been like that this time, if it had been the middle of summer, we'd have had to shut down the island, Oak Island would have had to shut down, every island would have had to shut down. Is there any talk about developing another water source? Do you know?
Yes, I'm gonna let Chris answer that. He's really got the most detailed explanation for that, the inter-basin transfer. That's what I'm thinking.
That inter-basin transfer that you're talking about, Dave, has already been put in place.
Right, but
It hadn't been for that, we would run out of water this time, but they're actually talking about doing a plant expansion in the next few years, which may pass it a little bit, but they still haven't really addressed the line itself about whether to replace it or not, but they do have a bypass in place. And I'm assuming that maybe they'll leave that bypass in, so if they have that failure again, they can revert back the other way, but we should be having a meeting on it in the next few days when they get the repairs complete.
That bypass is good for that one spot, but when you only have one line,
It's 1,000 feet of the line.
I understand that, but I'm saying when you only have one line, one feed,
As far as I know, that's correct.
and I know we had the interbasin transfer this time, but we were still in a stage 3.
Right.
And if we'd have had everybody on this island, in this island in full swing, using, a million gallons a day, we wouldn't have had it. They were asking us to do less than we were, and we weren't using but 250,000 gallons a day.
I understand that, and I'm pretty sure when they get the repairs complete in a couple of days, they'll probably have a meeting on it, and we'll express our feelings towards that too.
Well, if you go to a meeting, you may wanna point out they may need to do something
I have,
to alleviate their vulnerability.
yeah, I have a lot, it's probably a lot of people pointing at that right there, because that's about as big as the issue I've seen for this county, but I will give them praise that they already had that interbasin transfer in place, because if they hadn't done that, we would have been toast, and that was about a 3 or 4 year project getting that to take place. And I will also, like they have too, I will give them, my hats off to them for what they had to deal with, the way they carried it out, and being able to keep it running, they did an outstanding job considering what they were dealing with.
We might as well go ahead and admit the forthcoming necessity of a second water tower on this island. Put that in the back of your thinking cap, because whenever you build more houses, and on this 9-mile stretch of property, do the math, what you have in reserve. And also, Mr. Evans there, may want to address the requirements for the fire department, which we may be getting close to not having enough with it's just one water tank for the demand of houses that we have. So I don't want to get another discussion starting at the midnight hour, but just a little good news for you. All right, those of you that want to make public comments on anything you want to talk about, how much you love Holden Beach, your commissioners, your mayor, your staff, anything you want to say. If you be recognized, come forth and speak in the microphone. Do we have any such person here tonight? How about something other than your love for the commissioners and the mayor? All right.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.